How did the South Brent Community Wind Turbine get started? Where did that project come from?
Well, about 7 years ago, the Devon Association for Renewable Energy came to give a talk to the South Brent Action Group about renewable energy. And most of the questions from the audience were on things like domestic solar hot water heating and things like that. But then someone at the back of the audience asked whether there was anything we could do collectively. What could we do as a community rather than just as individuals? And so after the meeting, I found out who this was, and it was a chap called Ross Kenley. And so we met up in the pub afterwards, and together with a couple of others, one thing led to another, and this led to the formation of Sustainable South Brent. I was very keen on replicating the Brode-IFE Community Renewables wind turbine project, where they purchased a second-hand 75 kilowatt wind turbine, did it up themselves and installed it, and then used the revenue that it generated to promote and support further energy efficiency, energy saving measures. This is in Wales. So it started, about 7 years ago.
And you got the planning consent with no objections locally?
No formal objections to the actual planning application. There are concerns from some local neighbours to the machine, which is perhaps understandable, but they were good enough to recognise that it's a bona fide community project, and were prepared not to actually formally object to the planning application. So we're very grateful to them, even though they have not subscribed to the project and they're not members of the society. That they've been sufficiently understanding, if you like, of what we're trying to do to not to formally object. We had 2 consultations in the village initially with our first proposed site. We produced some photo montages for 3 sizes of machines and asked people what they thought, what their impressions were, and most people went for the middle size. Some people said we should go for the larger size, and several machines of the larger size, but the middle size was most popular. Once we established that in fact that first site was unsuitable due to microwave links and other constraints, we held a second public meeting and told people where we thought the machine could go, and that had generally favourable response as well. So on the basis of those 2, we then went to the planning application, and yes, that went through without any objections.
And you've recently successfully raised 430,000 in excess of your target to fund the project.
Our target was 420,000, and we've raised 430,000, which is great. That gives us a little bit in hand for any unexpected eventualities. So we're very happy to be able to honour all the applications that we've received. And so the share certificates have been issued, and we now have 189 members, which is great.
A very successful fundraising. What were the key ingredients of that?
It was a successful fundraising, and actually it surpassed our expectations. We got raised 430,000, which is very satisfying. I think there are any number of ingredients into that. At heart is basically a fundamentally good idea what we're doing here. It's a good scheme, it's well conceived, the engineering is sound, there's a solid business case around it. The proceeds of the scheme are divided more or less equally between private benefit, for individuals they're going to get a reasonable return on their money, but the balance, probably just over half if it runs to plan, will go to public benefit schemes and local charitable use and so on. And I think a lot of people respond to that sort of mixture. I think it's a really interesting sort of synthesis. It's also true, but it is genuinely, it's absolutely a bona fide community scheme. It's conceived locally, it's led locally, it's about 90% funded in the local postcode, I think. I think people trust the leadership, and crucially trust the leadership of Edward Jolly Chapman. It's absolutely outstanding, steady, consistent, honest, open, engaging leadership at every stage of this project, and it's had any number of hurdles to cross, which if people knew, they could only advise. So I think that's an important part. And we had a whole programme of public meetings, roadshow meetings, both in Brent and in surrounding areas. And the directors of the company, including Jolly, appeared at those meetings, and people could see, the people behind this, and basically trusted them as the long and short of it. And I think the final ingredient is the team around that, the network of relationships, which over the years the project's been put together has just been sort of people, the relationship with the landowners is it's a significant one. I think people get a sense of that. Relationship with the local parish councils is very strong. There's all sorts of engineering and supplier inputs and so on, and that reflects, again, going back to the leadership, the sort of quality of leadership at its core. So I think it's a good idea, good leadership, good team of network and relationships around it, add up to a good vibe. And so, the money started slowly, and by the original deadline, I think we only had about 25%. And at that point, a working group was set up to promote the scheme. And that's the group that I joined. It was led by Massimo Gianuzzi. He did a terrific job bringing that together. And it was very satisfying. Roadshow of meetings, doing all the basic things, advertising, sort of displays, posters. We took a pop-up shop in the village for a week. And tables outside the local newsagent, giving people every chance to just connect with it, learn a bit about it. And, in a community like this, people start to talk. And the momentum built. And the rate at which the envelopes started to arrive in the post box started to grow, didn't it? And,
yes,
and it's quite exciting, and then it really, and we got there. It was terrific.
So what are going to be the spin-offs of this project, Richard?
There's obviously a financial return for private investors. I think more enduringly, or as valuably, is this network of relationships we've created around this project. People connecting with each other in quite exciting ways. It's quite an ambitious project for a small village, and to see that we can do this sort of stuff is inspiring. It's inspired us locally, and I genuinely hope it inspires people further afield. You can do it. It is possible. You don't need the big corporates behind you.
Okay, so at the moment we've got the foundation in, so that's a slab of concrete with a steel cone embedded in it, ready to take the tower. And also the access track and the crane pad to support the 90-ton crane that will be needed to lift the tower into position. What will happen in the next few weeks is that various earthing systems will be installed in the ground. They have to be buried quite deep due to the nature of the ground. This is for electrical safety and lightning protection and so on. That will happen in the next few weeks. Then there'll be a bit of a pause whilst the machine is readied in San Leandro, which is on the other side of San Francisco Bay from San Francisco, and shipped out. So all being well, that should arrive sometime in July, and we should have it up and running by mid-August, fingers crossed. Then there'll be some testing for commissioning and so on. Western Power will install their pole-mounted transformer, it all gets hooked up, and our power purchase agreement is set to start on the 1st of August.